Now I hit the button. Today's agenda is super straightforward. We're going to do an introduction of chatbots. We're going to talk about the different types of bots, how to get started with creating them, some recommendations and guidelines for sure, and then some, just a general overall conclusion. We would ask that if you're joining us from your own browser to log into ChatGPT if you want to play along as we're going through and doing some of these fun things that we're going to be doing. ChatGPT is not by any means exclusive in the bot making world. You can make bots using many tools, but it's the one that we used for this particular workshop. And so therefore it makes sense if you have a ChatGPT account, log into it at any time. Our learning objectives for this workshop include, but are not limited to, discussing the potential of chatbots in education, identifying the appropriate use cases for chatbots, outlining the key steps in planning and developing a chatbot, and explain the importance of testing and refinement and maintenance of chatbots, and also some ethical and compliance considerations that are quite significant when we're considering chatbots. Our starting point, again, we want to make sure that you log into ChatGPT if you haven't already. And our biggest point on this is that there are so many tutorials available out online. You can absolutely learn how to do this without City's guidance. However, we really hope that you work with us as you're doing this and allow us to give you guidelines at least so that we don't run afoul with FERPA and HIPAA and cybersecurity and all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass to Emily Rush, who's going to give us, before we do anything further, Emily, let me apologize. Let's go back and actually introduce ourselves because we didn't even do that part. Jessen, do you want to start us off with a quick introduction?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Jessen Skiebout. I'm an attending in the emergency department. And I have a hobby of AI.
A very good hobby, I would say. Emily?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Emily Rush. I'm an instructional designer with City, and I've also been leading our AI initiatives.
And Daniel?
I'm Daniel Martin. I'm an instructional technologist with City.
And Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm an instructional designer with City, and I've been supporting our AI initiatives with the team.
And I'm Peg, and I also have been supporting AI with the team. So just a quick rundown. Emily, tag, you're it. Take us away.
Okay. All right. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to get started by talking a little bit about what are custom chatbots and what makes them different from regular uses of ChatGPT, Claude, or other tools. So some essential information about custom chatbots. We can think of them as specialized versions of GPT models. And by GPT here, I mean the technology generative pre-trained transformer, not specifically GPT as in ChatGPT. So some of the features of these tools are that they can be tailored for specific needs. They're usually, though, built on other large language models like ChatGPT. And we can sort of craft them in a way to make them more fine-tuned for focused queries or tasks. And we can include relevant knowledge bases or data sets. And next slide, please. Okay, so some key features of custom chatbots that might make them valuable for education are, first of all, they are generally no code and very user-friendly, which means that pretty much anyone with an account can use them. You can be a novice and still get a great deal of use out of them. You can also customize them for specific needs, which makes them really valuable. And some of the ways that you can do that are giving tailored instructions and knowledge bases. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more. You can also have more personalized interactions with the bots than you might have with just your regular ChatGPT account. And then a couple of other features, these are common to chatbots in general, but some of them offer multilingual support, opportunities for data analysis, and also the enhanced accessibility features through the vision feature. So these chatbots can read images and Many of them, especially if you use them on your mobile devices, have voice features, so they're highly accessible as well. Next slide, please. All right, and before I proceed, I just want to show you a screenshot of a sample chatbot. This is something that Laura Smith and I worked together to craft for the medical college, and it's a custom chatbot made with ChatGPT to help first-year medical students in immunology test their knowledge of T cells. And so some of the things that make this different from plain old ChatGPT is that it's highly customized. As I said, it has a specific data set, and it also has sort of a scenario-based element to it. So as you can see, once the user puts in a prompt, they are guided through a very specific scenario. So in a sense, if you create this, you can control the way someone interacts with it a little bit more than just using ChatGPT. Next slide, please. One of the other things that I love about custom bots is not only can you create them, you can also just use existing bots. So if you haven't done so already, you might explore the bots that are available through ChatGPT's GPT library. So you don't have to make a bot if you don't want to, but even better than that, one of the things that I really like to do is you can create an interaction in which you involve multiple chatbots. And this is actually part of the process that I used in creating the T-cell tutor chatbot. So I used, it's on the bottom of the screen, the AI tutor blueprint, and then I also looped in a custom roleplay anything chatbot. And so you can have conversations with these task-specific bots and sort of interweave these conversations, which is a fun thing to do. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I've already given you a little bit of sense of the differences between custom bots and general purpose bots, but I'll just elaborate on that a little bit more. So these custom bots are a little more specialized. It's much easier to customize them. As I said, they're user-friendly and often, know that not necessarily always, they might be designed for more specific or narrow tasks, and they have more specific training data or knowledge bases. In contrast, general purpose chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude, they're much broader in terms of their applications, and they yield a higher probability for generic responses, especially in educational uses. I'm going to skip over a couple other bullet points that I have there, but you can see them on the screen. All right, and this is just a handful of custom chatbot platforms that you could use to make your own chatbots. And I've tried to designate which platforms require a premium account. So the two most common, I think, commonly used in education are ChatGPT and Poe. Hugging Face might be an option, although I've heard about some potential security issues. Google Gemini has recently come out with its own custom platform called GEMS. Mizzou is one that I think it's used more commonly in K through 12, and it has the highest level of protection for FERPA. So that might be a consideration. I haven't experimented with that one, so I'm not overly familiar. One that is maybe even more user-friendly than ChatGPT or Poe is Google Notebooks. It won't have the pretty interface that ChatGPT has, but essentially you can upload a repository of articles and have an interactive bot that just interacts with those articles. That's a good question. So the platforms don't require student accounts or premium accounts. ChatGPT, for example, anyone with a ChatGPT can access a bot that I make. But if I'm an instructor and I want to make a bot, then I need a premium ChatGPT account. If you don't want to get a ChatGPT account, I would suggest trying Poe. That allows you to make free chatbots that you don't have to have a premium account and your students don't have to. And then there's just a few other options. Mind Studio is something that I hear educators talk about a lot, but I haven't really tried it. And Zapier, it's free. I've created a chatbot. It's not my preference. But if anyone wants to talk about Zapier, I'm happy to do so. And I have one more slide before I hand the conversation over to Daniel. And that's just a reminder about the risks and limitations involved in chatbots or any custom or any use of AI really. So anytime you're using AI, if you're training a chatbot, you want to make sure that you never include personal or sensitive information. You do not ever want to include student or patient information or proprietary content. And then when you're using any sort of generative AI tool, you always want to be careful about uploading intellectual property, proprietary information from a third party under a non-disclosure agreement, restricted circulation journal articles, or non-personal research information. Okay, and with that, I'll hand it over to Daniel.
Thanks, Emily. So as you can see, there's in some ways it's fairly easy to get into building chatbots. You've got a lot of options, but one of the things we wanted to talk about is just the different kinds of bots that are there. And even the title of this is a little misleading because the truth is the limitations are really based on your own imagination and your own experience. So, but really what this is getting to is an example of roughly 4 categories that you might think about of chatbots that you could build for your own courses. So just to get moving forward to that, next please. I want to start really quickly with just an example of something called StuckBot that was created for Boston College. And in full disclosure, a lot of what I'm talking about is based on a Harvard Business article that was produced by Boston College about their experience in creating custom chatbots. And I'll put that into the chat here as well. But in StuckBot, it's a really good example of what they created a bot that performed 2 functions. Students could use it to get unstuck. This is for a programming course, and they could query the bot for assistance in moving out of being unstuck. And the important thing to know about this is that the bot itself was designed to not provide the answer. Instead, its purpose was really to guide their students thinking along in finding the answer, in becoming unstuck. So that was one primary purpose of this. Now, what was also associated with this bot was a reflection assignment. So upon completion, the bot would actually assist the students in reflecting on the experience they've just been through in creating the work, which is a really a great idea in the sense that instead of just getting it done and moving on, it creates that opportunity in that moment for students to be able to, again, think about what they've experienced and have a deeper learning experience from that. That's really a great example of a bot. Let's move to the next one. So let's first talk about the sort of 4 categories that were identified in this work that these folks did. And the first is the course assistant chatbot. And the idea behind this one is that the course information itself is sort of loaded into the bot, if you will, and students can then use that to understand the course better, to find information they need in that course. And that can be even a matter of, where do I find my assignments? What are the expectations that are on me? And also, even to answer logistical questions, when is the midterm? What dates do we meet? And so on and so forth. And the bot is able to provide that information quickly. So again, it allows the students to focus more on learning instead of, being lost and trying to solve what are maybe sometimes pedestrian questions. It's helpful for students who are new, who maybe have not had a college experience before. And so again, it's getting them up to speed faster. It's level setting in that sense. It's particularly useful in online courses where any of us who've taken online courses know sometimes there's that mystery. The person who designed the course knows where everything is. Sometimes the person taking the course, it's not so clear. So that bot is another way of helping to unify that information. And also it just also reinforces key information. All right. The assignment tutor this is more along the lines of what we were just talking about with StuckBot. And as I described there, it's helping the students to move through the assignment itself. And in some ways, you can think of it as being it's somewhere in between a teacher and a TA. It's able to provide that information for the students in real time when they need it. And again, help them through those moments so they can proceed with the work. All right. We'll go to the next one. And then the process coach, this is also a nice one because the idea behind the process coach is you have oftentimes complex processes that students need to go through. And this is allowing students to break that mountain down into smaller pieces. We all know that's one of the best ways to approach a challenge, is to break that down. So that also reduces the need on the students to really be thinking too far ahead of themselves, instead moving to the next. It puts it, as we say here, into manageable chunks and guides those students step by step. It can also, if it's well designed, it can be personable and encouraging, which again, you want to keep students from being discouraged as they move through challenging projects. It's also customized in the sense that students are asking their own questions. They're querying that bot. It's not like the bot is simply laying out a map or something along those lines. Instead, it's meeting the student's specific needs as they arise, as they move through the project. Next, please. And then the reflective guide, which I described earlier with StuckBot, which to my way of thinking, what I understand about good instructional design is this is such a great goal to have, to provide your students with that process. And many of us perhaps naturally arrive at that, that when you complete a major task, when you are learning, you give yourself that moment to meditate on what you've done. But the reflective guide, it's much more intentional, frankly, and it creates that moment and that opportunity to have students move through reflecting on the learning experience that they've just had. All right. And next we want to do is Justin is going to be talking about the technical implementations of chatbots.
Hello. So we have a really nice kind of introduction and background of some of the things that we can kind of do with this, but I kind of wanted, I don't know if anybody's a visual learner. That's kind of how I understand concepts a lot of the time. So I kind of wanted to take a quick look under the hood and show you guys what's going on here. So when you're using a normal chatbot or an LLM, the user gives a prompt through a computer that goes to OpenAI's retrieval system. That information is tokenized, filtered through the LLM, which then generates a response. That information is then given back to the user. However, and so the benefit is, like ChatGPT has seen a lot of text. It's read a lot of different things. So it has a very broad knowledge base, but particularly in medical education, a lot of the things that we're doing, there's a lot of very fine details that ChatGPT, for example, maybe doesn't know. So then what happens as the user, if we input a prompt that's asking a question or requiring information that ChatGPT doesn't have a very good handle on, that information gets tokenized, filtered through the through the LLM, and you might get some erroneous or partially correct or just total straight up hallucination type responses back to the user. And so what we're doing here when we make our own tools is we're uploading information, a knowledge base or a data set, and particular instructions that we want our tool to use. So then when the user inputs a prompt, that information goes to the retrieval system, where it's combined with all of the instructions and knowledge that we've specialized and imparted into the system. Now that together goes and is processed through the LLM, which then gives us much more accurate and personalized or specialized information back to the user. If we go to the next slide. Good. So just a general overview of the process. The first step is really to kind of define your objectives and delineate what outcomes you want to be and understand how those outcomes relate to your objectives. And then you want to kind of go through your process and decide what in this process can be automated. How would I automate this? Particularly things that are very repetitive or rule-based work very well for this. So for example, I made LLM that will read and score emergency department's medical charts. And so what I did was I just uploaded or taught the GPT all of the rules and regulations that go around determining what level a chart is. And so it can apply that information to the user input and then give the user an answer. Once you're done with that, oh, sorry. Yeah. Once you're done with that, then you just go to your data gathering phase. So you want to get together all the information that you think is important. So that will require you to kind of define both what your target audience is and also the scope of knowledge of your audience and what you want your chatbot to do or to have. Then you can choose different tools. They kind of showed a slide of a bunch of different tools that we can use. All of those tools have different capabilities, different cost structures, cost of use, and different integration capabilities. Then once you've chosen your tool or your platform, then you can go ahead and start developing your model. And this is kind of where you're imparting the algorithms or the knowledge base. And then you can go into the testing phase. And that allows you to really kind of stress your system and see how well it works. And then you kind of iteratively go back and forth and upgrade your system and then test it until you get to the final product that you want. That's the phase where you really want to identify the risks and kind of stress the system so you can mitigate any of those risks. And you can also verify that everything is working before you roll it out. So if I can share my screen here, what I'm going to do is pull up my ChatGPT window. All right, here we go. So hopefully you guys can all see my ChatGPT screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This is what you see kind of when you open up the page. And so if we're looking to make our own GPTs, there's two different ways that you can kind of get to this activity. You can click on your icon in the upper right-hand corner and click My GPTs, which will pull up a list of all the GPTs that you've made, and you can click Create a New GPT. The other way to get to it is to go through Explore GPTs, and then you can click Create GPT. I should also take a quick moment. So some people were mentioning that there are a lot of bots that people have already gone through and taken the time to make. You can look at the ChatGPT library of bots here. So if, say, for example, I wanted to write a letter of recommendation. I can search for letter of recommendation applications, and it looks like there's quite a few here already. I can go through, read the reviews, figure out which one of those might help me write a letter of recommendation. Anyway, back to creating. So we want to make our own chatbot here. So we click Create. And now that brings us to this screen here, and we've got two different options. You've got a create and a configure option. The create option is where you're essentially just going to have a discussion with ChatGPT, and in the background, based off of the questions that it asks you and the answers, it is going to write all the instructions and things in the background for you. The other way to do it is the configure tab, and if you do this way, you're essentially just doing all of that, but you're doing it manually. So I do think that using the configure tab gives you better fine control. So if you have a very rigid algorithm that you need to adhere to, or a very well-defined goal, I think it's easier to use the configure. Whereas if you're using create, because you're kind of having a discussion with ChatGPT, sometimes you may include some of ChatGPT's ingenuity and creativity and what you get as an output. So let's say, for example, I want to make a bot to help our emergency medicine residents and medical students reference text or emergency medicine knowledge while they're on shift. So Tintinalli's is the name of one of our emergency medicine textbooks. So we'll call this Tintinalli's Emergency Medicine Reference. You can give the name here and a title here. Let's call it Tintinalli's again. And so these things that you're calling it in the description kind of show up on the user screen. So this is what they'll see. So you'd want to give like a nice brief description of what this tool is used for or how to use it. And then you also can give it a little icon. So you can click there. You can use Dolly to generate an icon for you. It'll kind of use what you called the app and what you put in the description to generate the icon. Or if you already have a picture of something that you want to use, you can just upload a picture. So there's just a little scan of the Tintinalli's cover. And then now we want to get into the instructions phase. So I've already typed out some instructions, but this is a really important part. This is where you're going to really kind of specifically discuss the type of behavior that you want your bot to do. You also want to specify the type of tone that you want your bot to kind of generate. If there are any tasks, so you can even do this in like a stepwise fashion. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But you want to be specific about the different tasks and steps that you want the bot to go through. And then also give it a good idea of what the context is. So the more context, the more specific and the better answers that it will give the user. And then lastly, this is also where you'd want to format or tell it the format of the output. So do you want a very wordy, verbose paragraph output, or do you want concise bullet point output? All those types of things you specify here. And then particularly, I think if we're using this for learners and other things, this is where you would specify things that you want it to avoid. So if there's certain topics that you don't want it to talk about, or you want it to avoid, or if you want to make sure that it stays on topic and only talks about emergency medicine, for example, you can put those types of things in here, and that will really help instruct it to not veer off course. A couple other things I found that work well, you can tell it to break down complex topics or concepts. It does a really nice job of that. You can also instruct it to ask further questions or clarifying questions. I've had mixed success with having it do that, but that's something that you might want to try and work in to make it a little more interactive. All right. So here, now we've got a bunch of our instructions all kind of set in. This conversation starter this will just pop up as a little button on the user screen. So if you want, so it's basically, you know, if they've got writer's block or they don't know how to start the process or what question to ask. So that will pop up as a little button here. Okay. And now down here, this is where we're going to upload any files that we want this to use as the database. Okay, so you can upload, previously it was 10, I think now it's up to 20 different files. The files can be PDFs, Word documents, Excel files, really just about anything, graphs, whatever. If it's a Word file, I've previously run into limits at about 100,000 words. I don't know if that's still a limitation, but as you can see, it's uploading this PDF, and there's way more than 100,000 words in this PDF text. So now this GPT essentially has all of the knowledge of our emergency medicine reference textbook. As I'm moving down, you can see this capability section here, and these are fairly self-explanatory. Clicking this gives your bot the ability to browse the web. Clicking this gives your bot the ability to generate images. We can talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then clicking this gives your bot the ability to read and write code. And then I think a lot of you guys at some point may want to integrate bots into things. If you want to integrate this bot into other programs via an API, you'd click that tab and you can go ahead and put in your API information and your schema information here. And then last but not least, there is a little button down here, additional settings. And you can click or unclick this. This will determine whether OpenAI uses your conversational information as training data for further iterations of their tools. Okay, so at this point, I've got what I think will be a pretty good bot to use. So I really need to kind of get in and start testing this. And so over here on the right-hand side, this is where I can start asking it questions. So ask it a general question, and let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. And so it's referencing that Tintinelli's textbook and going through and pulling up the things that Tintinelli say to do in this kind of painless jaundice situation. Uh-oh. Never fails when you have to do a presentation that the internet will go out. So it's referencing Tintinelli, and based off of, I'm having all these problems. So based off of that information in Tintinelli, it's giving me an answer. And I'm wondering if it's just the hospital Wi-Fi here is giving me some problems.
It's already a nice proof of concept.
Thank you. And so it can, now the student can ask it follow-up questions if they want. They can say, CPD was dilated, Billy Rubin was 15 at LFT for beta. What and so the students can work with this intermittently, and so it'll both give them guidance on care, but also work on differentials, essentially all the things that are kind of included in the tensionales. And so, right, this patient should have an ERCP or an MRCP, probably needs to be seen by surgery and so forth. And so if I was getting output here that I did not like, or I wanted to change the format, all I would have to do is go back over here and type in things to change it. And then I could go back over here and test it. The one thing about images, so let's just see what it comes up with. This is not reliable. Sometimes it doesn't even give you a picture. And oftentimes the medical pictures that DALL-E generates are not usable. I know some people in the anatomy department were trying to figure out how to get some of these to come up with anatomy image generations and make a interactive anatomy tool. So this is what we get a lot of the time. It's kind of a nonsensical picture. And so at some point that probably will be there, but I would not plan on being able to use, at least for ChatGPT, I would not plan on being able to develop an app that is going to generate real-time medical images to use. But anyways, so as I go through, I can reiterate this, I can change things over here. If you were using the Create tab, as you go through and have this conversation with ChatGPT over here, what it's doing is filling in this information over here in Configure. So if you use the Create process, once you're done, then you still want to go over here to Configure, and you may want to upload your documents, and this is still how you'll go ahead and troubleshoot everything. Okay. So I think everything is working pretty well here. So what I want to do now is go ahead and create. So I can click this button here, and this gives me a couple different options as to how I want to share this bot. I can have it available only to me. I can have it available to anybody with a link, or you can publish it in the GPT store. For something like this, where this is copyrighted information, I would not publish that in the GPT store, obviously. But I think that is appropriate to use like in your department for educational resources. So we'll say here, anyone with a link, save. And while that's saving, when you're doing your iterative testing, I think really what you want to do is stress your system. So go ahead, ask it some regular type questions that you think it's going to get, but then ask it off the wall questions and see what you get. If there are minute or specific details in what you've created, you want to test it, stress those details. So an example would be, I created a ChatGPT to help us score charts, ER charts, and it had a lot of difficulty understanding that an EKG done during today's visit does not count for points in the MDM, but if I look at an EKG from any other time, that does count for points in the MDM, and it didn't understand that based off the reference material that I provided. So I had to go in and give it specific instructions to remind it every time it looks at a chart that it would understand that information. So if you want to edit, you can just go back. You can go to your GPT and you can click Edit GPT. And so this brings us back to that screen where we were at before. I do recommend if you want, each time you iterate, if you make major changes, you can maybe change it as a next version. But if you forget to do that, you can click on these here and you can go to version history, and that will pull up all the prior versions of this GPT that you've made before. And that's pretty much the process of creating your own bot, at least in the OpenAI templates. Does anybody have any questions?
I think Peg's got her hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you, and that was awesome. A great demonstration. And I love the fact that it was applicable to what we do on a daily basis. I was wondering about copyright issues, and are there any, because we're keeping this internal, and educational, that would make it okay to upload a textbook.
Yeah,
I'm
so
thinking though that we have to be very careful about when we use copyrighted information and when we, if and when we go public with this stuff.
I think
So
it's
just,
very much like our lectures, right? So if I was
yeah,
giving a lecture to our residents, I would just scan an image in Tintinolly and put that in my PowerPoint because it's just for our education, it's just for use of that book. If I was going to do anything outside of our residency program or anything where you're charging money, you could not do that. You'd have to use your own
exactly,
proprietary information. Or if
exactly.
it's
And it's
public.
just really, yeah, right. Public domain is
So
fine.
this chart GPT is based off of the published criteria from CMS, right? So that's not proprietary information. And so if I wanted to make this a paid for or publish this nationally, I could.
Mm-hmm. So very interesting stuff. Were there other questions? I saw one in the chat about Karen asked, how would you have it also present responses that also take in age-related differences, even though that was not part of the question?
That's a good question. So I guess it depends on what your objective is. And so I guess for the Tintinolly one that we were using as an example, you could just give it the age and it will factor in that information because the LLM kind of understands that. So you could give it the age, you could give it other factors that increase risk or decrease risk of your case. And the LLM should understand that. But you don't want to give it pertinent health information. So if we go back to that figure, that diagram, everything that's going through this system is going to OpenAI servers and going through their process and then coming back. And so you do not want to have your users enter any pertinent health information or any protected information. And then also, if there's data, so if you were using this maybe to analyze data for your study or something like that, if you don't want any of that information possibly leaking out, I wouldn't upload that into the system to use that as data.
Okay, that's really good to know and really important to know too. Same thing with research. As you're, even if you anonymize the data, it still becomes part of the training materials for ChatGPT. As soon as you upload something, it becomes part of their training materials. So you could conceivably have somebody waiting in the wings, scouring to and looking to pounce and steal your stuff, I suppose, right?
So I think everything that you like, all the information that's submitted through this website goes through their server. And yeah, even if they say they're not saving that information to train on later, that process is not HIPAA compliant, for example.
Exactly.
And it's not secure. So I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I'm doing a study on the difference in student satisfaction based on this new MassCal simulation that we're doing versus an old. And like that, I'm sure is fine. I've been uploading my data sheets into ChatGPT to analyze that data, and I'm not worried about it. But if I was doing research on a new GLP-1 drug that's going to make billions and billions of dollars, I absolutely would not run that information through ChatGPT.
Oh, I like what Emily put in the chat too. You can use temporary chats that won't appear in the history, use or create memories, or be used to train our models. For safety purposes, we may keep a copy for 30 days. You would still want to exercise caution though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really important to note. I don't think it stops us.
And that's
Justin,
still
thank
not
you
HIPAA
so
compliant.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
for sure.
Thank you.
Let's jump back into, well, first of all, did anybody have any other questions for Justin? I don't want to cut off the questions here.
I have just one really quick one for
Yeah.
Justin. Over and above the cost of the GPT, ChatGPT account, are there any other additional costs that occur over time?
I have not run into them, but there are costs for the tokens. And it's so low that all of my uses have not come anywhere near what the limits are. I do think if you were gonna build up a multi-bot system, where you have 6 or 10 of these things interacting, and and they're doing long content in and out, you might run into that. But it's still pretty cheap. And one of the benefits of 4.0 is that it's, I forget, 100 or 1,000 times cheaper for the tokens. And so, I mean, we're talking like hundreds of thousands of tokens to even come close to where they're going to start charging you pennies for the use.
Understood. Great. Thank you.
And I'll save that for another workshop because I want to make sure we have time for everything. Any other questions for Jessen, or should we move on to our next? All right, I'm going to keep going back then. Give me 1 second to share my screen. I think we covered bot development pretty well. Laura and Emily, did you want to go over any other steps that you saw?
I don't think so. It was covered really well. I just put in the chat what we're calling our cookbook for creating custom bots. Unfortunately, aligns really well with what Justin has described. So it's just a document that you might keep in mind as you decide to develop a bot.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I had a spasm when I was clicking there.
That's okay. It happens. We can go to the next slide, and unless there are questions.
Okay, so and we refer to this as the Google Doc you shared is our cookbook for our chatbot cookbook.
Oh, that's cool.
Is that our official
Yeah.
title? Okay,
Yes, that's our working title.
That's our working title. Beautiful, love it. All right, next slide. Take it away.
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of great information. So I wanted to think about, at least from City's perspective and educational perspective, some ways that you might use chatbots to enhance learning. So as Daniel suggested, a great use could be a course FAQ, and that could be a nice way to just get your feet wet with chatbots. You could, as Daniel suggested, also use a course TA. And University of Pennsylvania just released a study on their it's called a GPTA. It's a custom chatbot TA that the students felt that was pretty much equivalent with the kinds of questions that a typical human TA would be able to answer in terms of the class. Other possible ways to enhance your courses would be personalized learning. Preliminary studies have shown that certain uses of chatbots can increase engagement in the classroom. They also provide opportunities for ubiquitous or just-in-time learning. And as Daniel described, there's also opportunities for feedback. And let's go to the next slide, please. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of scholarly discussion on the use of chatbots. So I'll just look at one study. It's a very narrow study, so we'll keep that in mind. It's a study of high school students in Turkey in a math class. And the study examined students, some of whom had access to a custom bot, some had access to just regular old GPT, and some of them had access to neither. And the study found out that the students with the custom, just regular ChatGPT and the custom bots outperformed the other students by benefiting from access to AI. The custom bot users performed better on practice questions and had a higher value perception of the learning activities than the other students. And those who used custom bots spent more time on the activities, asked twice as many questions. Overall, any student who had access to AI seemed to benefit, and AI access especially benefited weaker students. But one of the big takeaways is that, especially with the comparison of students who just use ChatGPT versus custom bots, is that students do need significant guidance to be able to use AI effectively in class environments. And there's the link to the study on the bottom of the page, and we'll share that when we send out the slide deck. And I think we can go to the next slide, please.
Oops. Okay. Did I miss a slide here? No, I did not. Okay. So, I mean, we pretty much covered a lot of ground here today. If you have questions, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out and talk to any of us one-on-one. It's really important for those general guidelines to sink in, though, in that we want very detailed instructions and guidelines and how to use it. Make sure that you're communicating your AI policy in general via simple syllabus. Use the tools to promote and focus on critical thinking, because that's where we always hear that students are struggling, right? So use the tool that seems to take away critical thinking and instead flip the paradigm and use it as a replacement, use it as a way to force them to think critically. Always looking at the limitations, try to redesign your assessments wherever you can. And by that, I mean, um, you want to create tasks that leverage your chatbot strengths while requiring original thought. You want to adapt your assessment methods, maybe doing an open note or open book exam instead of having them stress out over a multiple choice exam 2 hours in the TOB. Maybe have them do an open book exam, which allows them to spend more time and takes away the pressure, but you can also ask much more detailed questions that way. And then obviously we always want to emphasize ethics and address academic integrity over and over and over again. I think students, the closer they get to exams, the more they forget about those academic integrity principles. And certainly by the time they get to the final and they know whether or not they're doing well or not, desperate students will do almost anything to pass a course, I've learned. We always encourage faculty to stay updated, talk with us regularly. We do our best to stay on top of everything that's going on with AI, but even we find that it's changing so fast and things are becoming available. You know, we want you to stay in touch so you can share with us too, because you're always going to have good information. And then obviously we've talked about it several times before, this need to encourage reflection and gather student feedback and just trying to be more mindful and intentional with what we're doing instead of just, banging it out there. And obviously always being mindful of input so that your output is A, safe, B, true, and C, ethical. Questions to this point? We have 6 minutes left. We managed to do it within the time. And Andy, go ahead.
First of all, thank you. This was very helpful. Jessen, I love the walkthrough. I have a specific question, and it might be best answered offline, but I wanted to know if you'd run into any resources on using chatbots in role play type scenarios. The specific use case I'm thinking about is I teach a class on leadership, and I have this fantasy I could create a chatbot that would mimic a senior leadership team that somebody would then need to interact or interface with in various ways. It could demonstrate some different personality, motivation, other organizational barriers. If you run across any resources or examples along those lines, I'd love to see.
Emily's already put one in the chat for you, Andy. She's
Thank you.
quick. She's quick. Yeah, so try that one. And Emily, did you want to chime in?
No, I would suggest trying this bot first, this role play anything. And let me go back to, I mean, of course, I think it's wonderful to make your own bots, but this is an instructional designer. I think he's at UC Irvine or something, and he's made these amazing custom bots for a variety of purposes. He also has like a nursing case generator, job interviewer, so a variety of custom bots that might be useful just for you to start exploring the utility of these kinds of applications. But of course, yeah, you could also make your own bot.
Right. And you and Laura, in building your bot, you guys realized that it was a little bit more labor intensive than what you expected. So we kind of wanted to let people know here too that while we can support people wanting to build bots, we can't necessarily, jump in and do it for you. We are always here to help, but we just have to be kind of clear on that we're not going to be able to build chatbots for the university on the regular. We can absolutely work with you guys though to as you discover and develop yours. Does that help?
I think that would be a very easy task. Certainly try the one in the link. A lot of times those are really like all the kinks have been worked out and those work really well. In the chat, the chat area on the right, I uploaded it's a prompting framework. And if you're building your own chatbot that you want to have like the leadership persona and everything, I think if you just follow this format, and plug that into the instruction box. And if there's any proprietary or specific information or skills that you want it to use, you can upload that or specify that in the instruction box. But there is a lot of bots out there that have just what you're looking for, like a specific persona that people can talk to and interact with to learn from. Yeah.
It's so
Fantastic.
cool. It's so cool. All right. It is our last minute here. I'm going to go ahead and jump to our last slide. If you could take a minute, and as always, we want to thank Jessen for spending time with us today. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to city@rush.edu. And as always, we appreciate any feedback you can give us either through this form, or you can click on the link if you want to wait. But we have a handy QR code here for you, and we can put the link in the chat. She said, maybe we can. There we go. Copy link address. And here is, I lied. That was not the link. Does anybody have the form, the link handy for the form? Thank you, Laura. All right. Any last questions before we wrap up? Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop the recording so we can all speak freely now that the recording is off. Boom.